Yes, welcome everybody. Today, as Edwin said, this is our Christmas event, and today we're doing children's books, children's of all ages. We've got a really good range of books for different ages for children, but also hopefully you're going to hear a little bit about how the books were written, why the books were written, and possibly about the publishing of the books and getting them together to give you a little bit more insight into the books that you might be buying for children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews for Christmas. So I'd like to welcome... so today we have Dawn, Linda, and another Linda. I'll let them introduce themselves because they're going to read a little bit from one of their books to you to start with, just to give you a flavour of the sort of things that they write. Dawn, would you like to start?
Hi, my name's Dawn and I write for all ages really. I do picture books, so that's a very young end, so 5 to 7 year olds, but also middle grade, what we call middle grade, which is 7 to 12 year olds. So I'm going to read you just a little bit from one of my books, which is called Lost in Time, which is a fantastical adventure through a wormhole into a world where time is running out. "Let's follow it," called Connie, running along the platform after the mouse. "Wait, come back. You can't go down there," exclaimed Nevis. "What if there's another train? Come back." "But can't you see it wants us to follow it?" shouted Connie, already chasing after the mouse. Connie had seen such a look of intelligence in the eyes of the mouse, she was sure it was trying to tell her something. After a short distance, the mouse slowed down, as if waiting for her. Then it flicked its tail and disappeared into a doorway on the side of the tunnel. Nevis clutched Captain tightly and followed as fast as he could. "Wait for us," he called after Connie. Ignoring Captain's yowls, Connie dived through a doorway after the mouse. She found herself in a narrow tunnel where lamps dotted the ceiling, casting an eerie glow over the cold, damp walls. She hurried to keep up. "We really should turn back," puffed Nevis behind her. Captain's tail swished from side to side, the tunnel echoing his impatient meows. Deep in the tunnel, the time glitches made the ground above them shake, and in the dim, flickering light, it felt like they may be walking towards their doom. Up ahead, Connie spotted another doorway. The mouse stopped and raised itself on its hind legs. The little light strapped to its back flashed, and the mouse twitched its whiskers as if listening to something. But Connie could hear nothing besides her own breathing. Suddenly the mouse ran, faster this time, and it shot through the doorway and out of sight. Connie gave chase. "Wait for us," panted Nevis. "Do keep still, Captain." The mouse led them into a cavernous room which was stacked from floor to ceiling with a vast array of metal cages, each containing white mice, hundreds and hundreds of them. "I knew he was leading us to something important," called Connie. What must have once been a disused station was now home to the stranger's laboratory. Machines with illuminated screens sent beeps echoing around them like weird music. Each was linked to another by a complex tangle of leads, and in the very centre of them stood a giant black machine, across which scrolled an incessant stream of numbers. Beside it stood a large crate piled high with silver boxes, just like the one the mouse had strapped to its back. A young man, dressed in a flowing white coat, stood at a long workbench. A mass of black curls covered his head, and purple shoes that tapered to a skinny point stuck out beneath his coat, and in his hands he held the mouse Connie had followed. He inserted a probe into the silver box strapped to the mouse's back, pushing down firmly on the mouse to stop it wriggling. "You're hurting him," cried Connie. The man ignored her and carried on until the silver box emitted a series of tiny beeps. With each new beep, the scrolling numbers increased in size as if they were counting up, a second at a time. Connie ignored Nevis's cough behind her. "What are you doing? Put him down," shouted Connie. Nevis motioned her to be quiet, but it was too late. The young man spun round. The mouse he'd been holding wriggled free, jumped to the floor, and darted behind a stack of cages. The numbers on the scrolling screen froze. "Now look what you've done." The young man glared at Novice. "What are you doing here?" "I asked first," said Connie, with more confidence than she felt. She really didn't like the way the man was looking at her and Nevis. Her face burned all over. Nevis shot her a warning look, and Captain howled and frantically struggled to free his back legs from Nevis's grasp. "I don't have time to explain," snapped the young man, swinging back around to find the mouse gone. He slammed his fist onto the bench, sending a pile of silver boxes clattering to the floor. "That'll just have to do for now," he exclaimed. Hurriedly, he started tapping buttons and turning dials. He plugged a curly silver lead into the large black machine, and almost immediately the numbers started counting downwards. "And get that cat out of here before he frightens the mice."
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you. Linda.
Okay, so my book was called Underground, and it's written for. Do I need the microphone? Use this one. So my book was called Underground, and it's a book that's written for young adults. So the extract that I'm going to read is the main character is a boy called Danny, and he's just decided to run away from home because his mum's been taken into hospital, and he's running away because he's afraid that he's going to get taken into care. So, back straining, I pulled the wardrobe forward. The rip of the plastic bag taped to the back was satisfying as I pulled it off. Almost £300. It had taken nearly a year to save, working weekends, stacking shelves at the supermarket on the estate. It wasn't hard. The hard work was to keep the money from Mum. Somehow Megsie had always managed to persuade her to hand it over so it could be snorted away. He said she needed it. It made her better, and she believed him. There was always a promise to pay me back. I was still waiting. The hiding place behind the wardrobe had been a good one. It was too heavy for her to move. I split the notes in two, rolled them up and shoved a wad down each sock in case I got mugged or something. I'd seen it in films. No doubt they'd seen the same ones too, so it probably didn't matter. I checked my pocket for my phone, then stopped. I heard a bang, and it was coming from downstairs. Shit, the social worker. But they'd knock. They wouldn't walk in. I strained my ears. Drawers and cupboards were being opened and shut. Whoever was down there was looking for something. That was no social worker. My heart knocked against my chest. I knew who it was. It was worse. Megsie, and that could only be bad news. Slowly I crept to the top of the stairs, stepping left, then right, avoiding the creaks. I made my way down. At the bottom I looked into the living room. I was right, Megsie with his buzz cut, fake Armani t-shirt and knock-off trainers. My fingers curled into fists, the sight of him bringing with it the reminder of Mum laying in a hospital bed. In my head, I'd give him a kicking because of what he'd done. In reality, I wouldn't stand a chance. My fingers uncurled as I watched him, bent over, peering behind the TV. If I was quiet, I could slip through the kitchen and out the back, but as my hand connected with the door handle, Megsie's connected heavily with my shoulder. "All right, Danny." His hand gripped tighter. Icy coldness washed over me. I was going nowhere. I turned around. "Megsie," I said it like he was a mad dog, trying not to show my fear. "If you're looking for Mum, she's not around." "Yeah, heard she had a funny turn," he said. Fist clenched, a flash of anger burned as I pictured Mum in the hospital. If it wasn't for him, she wouldn't be there. I wanted to grab him and shake him. Inside, I raged. This was his fault, him and his stupid drugs. I wanted to shout it out, but the words didn't make it to my mouth. I wanted to keep my teeth, and it wouldn't help Mum. "Thing is, son," Megsie began. I grimaced inwardly, wishing he'd stop calling me son. He carried on. "Yeah, thing is, son, she owes me money, and not just me." He was smiling, but his voice was savage. "Don't suppose you know where she keeps it?" I shook my head. Mum didn't have any money, he knew that. He looked at me through slanted eyes, his fingers dug deeper inside my skin. He'd finished being nice.
Oh. Thank you, Linda. Mm. Linda.
Shall I try without?
Linda.
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Oh, great. I'm Linda Jones. I'm an author and I've been writing for several years, and I write a variety of books.
Linda, can I just say that I can't hear you, so
No problem. I'll do my best. I think that's on. Hang on.
It's on now.
It's on. Is that better? Can you hear me? Excellent. I write a variety of books, and I'm here on two accounts today. I belong to an organisation called Promoting Yorkshire Authors, and there are 400 and odd of us now. And we run a children's group. And this year we decided we were going to write a children's anthology, which is almost complete. It's brilliant. Should be out in Easter. So this is the proof of the cover. It's not going to be that big. It will be that big. So what I thought I'd do is read the first story from the anthology, and I do have permission, so that's all right. So just give me a moment. So the title came about purely by accident. It was a throwaway comment, but we stayed with it. So it's the very first story is called I Want a Crocodile and Make It Snappy by Paul Smith. By 9 in the morning on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday, Archie McSniffle had already made up his mind. He absolutely, positively, completely needed a crocodile. Not a dog, not a cat, not even a guinea pig with a mohawk. A crocodile. I want a crocodile and make it snappy, Archie said, slapping his piggy bank on the kitchen counter with dramatic flair. His mum blinked. You want what? A crocodile, preferably one that can ride a skateboard, juggle jelly, and eat my homework if necessary. Eat your homework? Only the bad bits for quality control. Mum blinked again. Archibald Alexander McSniffle, you are not getting a crocodile. Archie gasped. Full name usage. This was serious. Why not? He stretched the word like a piece of bubblegum stuck between his teeth. Because they're snappy. Mum stirred her tea. That's what I said. Make it snappy. I want one today. I want never gets, young man. They snap with teeth. Giant, chompy, homework destroying teeth. Exactly. That's the point. Mum sighed, a long, exhausted sigh of someone who had once had dreams of being a ballerina, but now spent Tuesday mornings explaining why crocodiles weren't appropriate pets for young boys. Oh, go ask your father. Archie zipped into the garage where his dad was attempting to build a bookshelf that already looked like gravity would dismantle it forcefully. Dad, I want a crocodile and make it snappy. Sorry about this, it's e-books, isn't it? Dad didn't look up. Is this like the time you wanted a llama to mow the lawn? No, this is more serious. Like when you wanted a walrus to help with your maths homework. That walrus had credentials. Forget that. Crocodile, today, now. Dad scratched his head. Well, don't crocodiles need, swamps? We have a bathtub. Well, aren't they dangerous? I'll train him in kindness, diplomacy, and interpretive dance. You'll feed him? I'll let him eat the Brussels sprouts. Now that is tempting. I'll call him Sir Snap-a-Lot. A great name, has to be said. Before Archie's dad was convinced, he heard a crash, scream, and the sound of the dog yelping as it climbed into the laundry basket to hide. Mum, Archie, Dad, shouted Archie's sister Penelope, arriving like a tornado. There's a crocodile in the garden. Archie's eyes lit up. Oh, that was fast. He raced outside to discover, lounging in the flower bed, nibbling on a garden gnome, a life-sized crocodile. Sir Snap-a-Lot. Archie approached slowly. Hello, mate. The crocodile smiled involuntarily and glanced up, gnome crumbs attached to its chin. A slow, sly wink decorated his face. Archie took this as a sign of friendship or perhaps indigestion. Either way, it was love at first snap. Dad tiptoed outside holding a hard bristled brush like a lance. "Stay back, everyone. This crocodile is armed and extremely scaly." Mum peered out of the window, already searching the internet for how to approach and disable a crocodile without losing an arm. Where on earth did that come from? Penelope had jumped on top of the fridge and was refusing to climb down. Sir Snap-a-Lot belched loudly. Archie beamed. "He came for me, knew I wanted him." "He probably escaped from the zoo. I found this on the internet. Crocodile escapes during a party at the zoo. It is dangerous and may enjoy eating pets, and especially shoes." At that moment, Sir Snap-a-Lot swallowed Penelope's left trainer. "Archie, you can't keep him. He's not a puppy, more a dinosaur in disguise." "He's perfect, Dad. He ate the postman's bike," said Mum. "He has personality. He growled at Grandma. Well, she asked if he was a handbag." The crocodile snorted as Archie threw his arms around Sir Snap-a-Lot's neck. "You don't understand. I've never connected with a creature like this before. He gets me." Sir Snap-a-Lot, touched by the moment, licked Archie's face and then burped up the garden hose. "I'll take care of him, bathe him, walk him, floss his teeth, everything." "He belongs at the zoo," said Penelope, still on top of the fridge. "They've got swampy stuff and things for him to chew that doesn't involve shoes and pets." Sir Snap-a-Lot looked wistful. Archie looked at his new best friend. "Would you be happier there?" The crocodile gave a gentle snuffle and a tear dribbled down his snout. "I'll miss you, pal," Archie whispered. Sir Snap-a-Lot nodded and wafted his tail to the side. They called the zoo, and within 10 minutes a helmeted zookeeper arrived in a van with "Zoo Escapes Team" painted in day-glow letters on the side. "Thanks for keeping him safe. Bit of a rascal, that one. Tried to join a synchronised swimming team last week." As the crocodile was loaded into the van, Archie gave him one last hug. "Don't forget me, okay?" Sir Snap-a-Lot tapped his snout affectionately against Archie's forehead, then climbed into the van with the grace of a belly-flopping hippo. With a roar and a burp, he was gone. The next day, Archie sat on the porch, staring sadly at the empty flower bed. Mum sat beside him, sipping tea. "You did a brave thing, letting him go." "I know, but it stinks. Maybe someday you'll visit him." "Maybe." The postman arrived with a large envelope. Inside was a photo of Sir Snap-a-Lot wearing a tutu and balancing on a unicycle with a note. "Dear Archie, thanks for everything. I'm learning ballet and I've only eaten 3 instructors. You'd be proud. Come and visit me soon. Love, Sir Snap-a-Lot. P.S. I'm still snappy." Archie smiled. Maybe he didn't own a crocodile anymore, but he had something better. A best friend with scales, dreams, and a wicked sense of humour. Next Tuesday, he'd ask for a kangaroo.
Oh dear. I think you can hear from that all the different styles that people write in, but the humour that comes through for children as well. And I think that's really good. But where do these ideas come from? Why do you write about mice, or you write about well, you didn't write the crocodiles, but or the very teenage, very adult themes in that book too. So, Dawn, do you want to start and tell us a little bit about where your ideas come from?
My ideas always come from images, usually. So for Lost in Time, we probably all remember the nursery rhyme, Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse ran up the clock. Well, that's where this book came from, because I picture a mouse, a white mouse, climbing up at a clock, and I'm thinking, but what if it steals the time? So that's where this idea all came from, a world where time was running out and a world where other people were stealing time. But other books come from different places. So, for example, Pandemonium of Parrots. On the face of it, it is a story all about a little boy and his 6 mechanical parrots that are stolen. But the idea came from the image of a power station, because a friend of ours has a little girl, and she said that the power station looked like a cloud machine, because all the sort of little puffy clouds. And so this book started with an orangery, a mechanical, 6 mechanical parrots, an inventor uncle, and he had a cloud machine. And so that's where this one all came from. So ideas come from very, very strange places for me, but usually images. A picture that I see will then spark an idea. And most of my stories are fantastical adventures, but they're never usually just fantastical adventures. Yes, there's lots of peril, and yes, there are beasts, but always they're about family and they're always about friendship. So that's usually what children relate to. But I also do meatier subjects as well, of course. So Lost in Time is all about the importance of time, how time can control us, how maybe it's not always good to have constantly be watching the clock. So that's what that one's about. And Pandemonium of Parrots, yes, it's got a steam pirate and it's got a mechanical zoo, but it's about the death of a parent, essentially, and how a child gets over that. So I do have weightier subjects, but they're hidden in amongst a fantasy adventure.
And Linda, yours is very weighty subjects,
Yes.
isn't it? I mean, it's you've got some real serious topics in that book. So where did that book come from? And what age group is it really aimed towards?
It's marketed as being aimed to, from 12 upwards, but there are probably some themes which, you know, I would think might be more sort of like 14 upwards sort of. But then again, you know, I think they're important themes for all young people. So the inspiration for my book, so this is my first published book and I've got my second book, which hopefully will be out next year. But professionally, I've worked with young people who have social, emotional, mental health problems. And my inspiration comes from a lot of the young people who I've worked with, not any particular one person, but sort of like, you know, maybe things that I've seen young people experience. I think one of the key things for me has been the resilience of some of the young people I've worked with who've, you know, probably had not the greatest start in life and have had to deal with lots and lots of issues. And a lot of those sort of like issues are getting harder and harder for young people to deal with. So that's sort of where the inspiration for my stories come from. And I think this story particularly, Danny is quite a quiet boy, and I wanted to talk about a quiet boy because often we think of boys who you know experience or have difficult backgrounds are loud and, you know, get into trouble a lot, but in my sort of like working experience, there's a lot of young people who just fall under the radar, and because they're quiet, they don't get the help. Well, you know, not everybody gets the help anyway. So I think that's why I wanted to write about Danny. And I just think it's important for people to understand that these issues are real. My stories have got hope and they do have a happy ending. But I do think, you know, in real life, we don't always have that happy ending. But my stories do. But yeah, that's where my inspiration came from. And it's really about the resilience that I've seen in children that I've worked with, because sometimes it just floors me that they can be so resilient.
Yeah. Amazing, aren't they, some of them? Yeah. Thank you, Linda.
It's confusing.
I know that wasn't your story.
that
that's
wasn't my story.
someone else's story.
No.
So, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your
Yes.
inspiration for your this particularly?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting what Linda said about where you get your inspiration from. I worked in mental health for many years. It was my career, and I met a lot of young people. Mostly as they crept into adulthood, who'd been through, you know, pretty awful times, abuse, etc. And I felt it was really important. I wasn't going to talk about them specifically because I think that's really important, but it's about the themes that come out. And although this book is it's a contemporary novel, it's the very first book I wrote, and it's actually about a young boy who's been medically enhanced, if you like. He's had some cells put into his back. I mean, I say it's fantasy. Do you remember the picture of the mouse with the ear on its back? That's what inspired this. It was about manipulation. And that's what this book is about. It's aimed at young people. It's from 11, 12 years upwards. Lots of adults read it. And it's one of a series. And I just felt it was important to try and talk about friendship. And when things are difficult, when things are hard, when you're on your own as a young person, what do you do? Especially when you're in such a situation as this. I mean, I would hate to spoil it for you, but the cover sort of hints about what happens. So it's a fantasy type story, but it's got foundations in friendship and loneliness, in running away. I think we have similar themes there, and how these young people cope. I've written lots of other age books. So this book here is a particular one that I wrote, and it's for younger people, sort of short chapter books. And my son was dyslexic, or is dyslexic, and he couldn't read. He couldn't read till he was about 14. So I spent years and years reading every book I possibly could to him, and got very frustrated. So when I had to give up my mental health career and I started to write, I was determined I was going to write books that were fun to read for adults. So important. Please remember, if you're going to be an author, please do that. But also were sort of good reads for early readers. So very short chapters, not too simple language, but things that were easier to read. So that's where this series came from. That's actually the third. And recently I've written crime, and I've also written children's picture books. It's a great mix. So when I'm fed up with murdering people, I do this.
That seems a good move, really, when you're fed up with murdering people. Yes, so you've all hinted a little bit about age groups that you write for. And I find that interesting that you talk about the short chapters. So what interests me when I'm picking a book up, and I have lots of grandchildren to buy books for of all ages, is how do I decide that this is for age 7, 9, 11, 13? So how are you aiming your books? What do you do that makes your books suit a particular age group? How do you make it easy for them and attractive to them? Dawn, do you want to talk about that?
Interesting question. Because I write for different age groups, but when it comes to the very younger market, what I do for that is to make it as bright and as bold as possible, because I'm an illustrator as well, so I illustrate my own books. So I go for big and I go for bright and I go for things that are fun. So this is one of the series. It's the first one. It's about a gardening witch. So I like to sort of turn things on their head. Most witches are very good at magic. Mabel is terrible at magic and very good at gardening. But it gave me the excuse to do very bright, beautiful illustrations. And I think that's what appeals to that particular age group, which is 5 to 7, which are books that they would share with somebody else. They wouldn't necessarily read themselves, although they could, the slightly older ones. But when it comes to the older type of books from 7 to 12, I love that age group because the kids are wanting something that sort of is an adventure and it's exciting and it gives them a thrill, but it also enables them to expand their vocabulary and I do illustrate them. I always give them a little chapter heading illustration as well as the cover that I do, so they get a glimpse of what the world is. But I like this kind of book because it gives them a chance to really expand their horizons on stories. It's much better, more complex language. It's got more plot twists, more involved. But at the same time, they're a lot of fun. And I think books need to be fun to be read. You don't want to become too dry or too boring. No. It needs to be a flight of fancy that they can run after and see where they go. So the age group that you write for will depend very much on what kind of the content is.
Do you, in that same way then, do you, when you're getting the book published, look at the font and the size of the font?
I don't, because I have publishers, I don't get to have any content, I don't have any say on that. At the moment, I am allowed to illustrate my own books. I'm very lucky because I am a trained illustrator, so that helps. But the publishers will then decide how to lay everything out and the size and everything else. I really just do the pictures and the words. I don't get any control over the publishing side of it itself.
And Linda, your book with its again rather heavy themes, even if it has a good ending. How did you decide the language and how to write the book, the length of the chapters? Was there something there to make it appeal to young people of that age?
So I think the book's quite, it is very gritty, and it does touch on some quite dark issues. But what I tried to do was write about issues that are relevant to young people. Now, they might be relevant to some young people because they experience them. Some young people might be very lucky and not experience anything like that. But I think it's still important for them to know that these things happen, and that also that how to avoid them as much as anything. In terms of the language, I think writing for teenagers can be quite difficult because sometimes they speak a language that we don't understand, and also it can become very outdated very quickly as well. So I have to be very careful in terms of the language that I've used, so it doesn't become outdated. So sort of like trying to keep it quite general and not using sort of like terms of the moment. In terms of chapters, again, trying to keep them quite short and snappy so that it keeps the book moving on and keeps young people interested in reading the book, and sort of like what happens next, leaving each chapter on a bit of a cliffhanger. And so in terms of age, I mean, I think the book, yes, it's aimed at teenagers. There might be some younger people who would read it depending on their life experiences, but I think also quite a lot of adults have read it actually, and it's quite an adult book as well. So yeah.
Yes, I guess there's something in there about adults reading it to be able to understand their teenagers.
Yes, very much.
It is, or it can be a world where you really don't have any insight into what they're going through or the lives they're living, or their friends are living. Maybe not them. Yes. Yes, I can see that. Linda, you talked about dyslexia, and that's a really hard thing for many youngsters, particularly with reading. Is there something you can do in the way that you write a book that helps that?
Yes. Yes, there is.
Good.
Well, dyslexia is an overall term. I'm sure everybody here has heard of it, and it isn't just one single thing. For my son, what he had real issues with were, so for instance, inside this book, like Dawn, it's got brightly coloured pictures, but you'll notice that the writing is very large and it's on a separate page. Now, for my son, and I can only talk about him, and for myself when I was younger, I couldn't deal with the really bright, glossy pages. And as much as I'd love to produce this in bright, glossy pages, because it does look lovely, I can't see the words. So if those words were over the picture and it was glossy, I have really struggled to read them, even now as an adult. And Joshua certainly couldn't. So I thought, well, so what? So what I have done in fact, all of my picture books so far, is I've kept the words separate. And it's a deliberate thing. Does mean you've got a whole page of illustration, which is lovely. I don't illustrate. I can't draw a straight line. I really am one of those people. But I have a wonderful lady that I work with in a small craft shop who can do anything. And I mean anything. She can weld things, she can draw things, she can make things. And she very kindly said, well, I'd love to illustrate one of your stories. It's great. So that's what's happened. So we share this book. But yes, for dyslexia, certainly this works. And the other thing is the short chapters. So again, in these books, you'll notice, and I'm sure for the others as well, I don't use white pages. I never, ever use white pages. So the colour of the page is deliberately cream. Now you have a choice, you can do it on white, and some people think that looks much smarter and better, but I couldn't read it. I'd have to read it on my Kindle. So, it's just something to take on board with. And you mentioned fonts, Kate, and fonts are really important when you are dyslexic, and spacing. So again, it's at least a 12. Sometimes in some of these books I've used a 14 or a 13, and I make sure the spacing between lines isn't too big, because you lose the way that, you just lose track. So just, if I can, I try and make it just slightly wider. So these days it's easier, isn't it, on words and such like, so you can deliberately choose your own space.
That's fascinating, Linda. And I can see that, what you're talking about there. I have a granddaughter who is dyslexic, and she needs things on blue paper.
Yeah.
And I've known other dyslexics who need it on yellow paper to be able to read it. So it is really about just making it as easy as possible for these children to be able to read the words. Yeah. So the other thing, and Dawn and I had a little not chat, but emails about this, is about writing for boys and girls. And obviously that's something that you must think about as you're writing. But how do you, if you want to make it appeal to both boys and girls, is that easy to do these days? Or is there something you have to do with your stories, make your stories different? Linda, do you want to pick that one up again? Or
Me?
You're pulling a face,
Yeah,
aren't you?
no,
As if you don't want to do that.
No,
fine.
Yeah. So when I was writing this book, I wrote it for a boy. No, I had a boy in mind, if I'm honest. Got halfway through and I thought, I need some really strong female characters in here, which was wonderful because it opened the book up. So there's this constant, he meets a third of the way through the book, Joe, I have to try and remember the characters' names, meets a lass called Lucy, and she is really strong, really feisty, really positive, and he meets several other females as well. And that's how the book progresses. So if the main character happens to be male, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you balance it with the other characters and try really hard not to stereotype them if possible. We all fall into it, not all boys, it's exactly what you said, Linda. Not all boys are loud and, leery. Lots of boys are very quiet and studious, etc. So it's really important not to fall into those traps, whether they're children or adults or whatever.
Linda, you've clearly written yours about a boy, but how have you balanced it there and there?
Well, when I started writing it, I knew I was writing about a boy, obviously, but I didn't consciously decide whether I was writing for girls or boys. But as I started writing it, I did think, this hopefully will appeal to boys. Certainly, sort of like in my working profession, it was very difficult sometimes to get boys to read. So that sort of like made me think a bit more about how I was writing the book, but obviously wanted it to appeal to both boys and girls. And then my second book, there is also a female character in this book. She's sort of like the second main character. So, I think this book would appeal to boys and girls. My second book, I did ask myself that question because it is the lead character in that book is actually a girl, and automatically it might not appeal so much to boys, but that made me think more about the male characters that I was writing. So although they weren't sort of like the main characters in the story, I wanted to make them like Linda said, not stereotypical but appealing to both boys and girls. So hopefully there's a bit of a balance there. Yeah. But I don't think I ever set out to think, this is a girl's book or this is a boy's book. But I think it's something you do have to take into consideration.
Dawn.
I actually have an interesting story to tell you about that I didn't tell you about. No. Now, normally I like to have a very strong female lead, and I have a lot of boy characters as well. So Lost in Time, we've got Connie and Mia, both girls, of course, and we've got the bad villains who are all men. So the next one, I decided, no, I'm going to have a boy as a lead. I'm going to have Otto, and I'm going to have a really evil female antagonist. But my publisher looked at it and said, well, I can't print this as it is, she said, because I had 2 boys and the male and the female bad guy. And she said, no, I've looked at this book, and there's no way you can have that many boys in a book. So she literally, I had to change the sex of one of my characters for this publisher, who insisted that no, Otto's friend had to be Florence and not the little boy that I wanted. It works very well, and I probably will agree with her, but yeah, there's a conversation to have with your publisher. So there you go, that's interesting.
Very interesting, yes. So how much influence does your publisher have over your books then, Dawn?
I think publishers have the final say on everything, pretty much, if you have a publisher. You have to pretty well go with it if you want to sign a contract with them. I didn't have a choice with this one. There's no way to say, well, we're going to do it with 2 little boys in the lead. But having said that, when I did my picture book, Mabel, it's all girls. It's girls all the way through. I've got 2 female witches, and it's full of flowers. And this particular publisher was perfectly happy with that. So it depends on your publisher, I think.
Do you have anything with your publisher about
No.
your characters then, Linda?
No, my publisher was, there was a few changes that were suggested, but it wasn't anything really about the story or the structure. It was probably my punctuation, because I don't do it. So it was probably that. But no, I would say very supportive in terms of the book and discussing things. Yeah.
Linda?
I had absolutely no problem whatsoever because I published my own. So I have, and I had a traditional publisher from the very first book, and it lasted for about just under 2 years, and I had to take the book back. I was very new and naive to the whole thing, so I took it back, got somebody else to edit it for me, republished it. We did part amicably, but yes, I'm not going to get into that argument, but if you can get a traditional publisher who will support you appropriately, brilliant. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with going down the independent route, as long as you're having your work professionally edited and looked at. That's really important.
Yeah, so we're now around Christmas, aren't we? So what about your Christmassy books? Do you write Christmassy books? And if you do, what do you put in there that's so different? Dawn?
I actually won a competition to write these. I entered a competition in a national writing magazine, and a company, Kickback Books, were looking for a writer to write a Christmas series, a very particular Christmas fantasy adventure series. So I won the contract to write these. But this is all about a reimagining of Christmas, which I found really fun to do, because normally Christmas is everybody knows about Christmas and presents and elves and all the rest of it, but they wanted to turn that on their head. And so I've got a Christmas series whereby it's all done on a farm and every single thing is grown. So it was a lovely, fun thing to play with. And I was also lucky because, of course, I had lots of ogres and elves and yetis, and I had every possible magical beast there was. And so it was a whale of a time writing these. So I really enjoyed it. So Christmas can be really fun.
Does that apply to you?
I haven't done anything Christmassy, but maybe that's something I will think about.
Maybe you will.
Yeah.
You have.
I've got the very first book in this series, which is called Deadwood Hall, is set at midwinter and begins in midwinter, just before Christmas. That was brilliant fun to write, because I'd written that one first and I went on to this series because it was short and sharp and I was sort of in the mood for it. And that was fun. And more recently, I started to write picture books. My husband and I used to do shadow puppets, and we take them to the local museum at Christmas or Halloween or whatever, and we do these short stories And my husband would cut out all the shapes, taking weeks. And I'd do the narration and he'd be behind making a fool of himself, essentially, which he thoroughly enjoyed. And it always went very well. But it meant I had this collection of short stories. And what do you do with them? Because I felt they had, more life in them. So as I said, this wonderful woman, Carol Marsh, who's the illustrator, said, "Oh, I'd love to illustrate those for you." Thank you very much. So yes, and we brought out a Christmas one, which is over there last year. And this one is about Marmalade Orange, which is a cat, strangely enough. And it's based on a real cat that was called Caramel, not my cat. And if you've got cats, you'll understand it completely. So it's complete chaos. The cat is watching them put up the Christmas decorations. So I'll just leave it there. I'm sure you can imagine what happens. But brilliant fun to write, and even better watching it being illustrated. It was great.
Yes. So do you have, I'm going to ask all of you this, do you have a favourite book from anywhere throughout your life about Christmas, a favourite Christmas book? Linda's nodding. Do you, Linda?
I do. My favourite Christmas book goes back to my childhood, and it was the Enid Blyton Book of Christmas, which it was a story about a family, and it was like perfect family, so that appealed to me. They got mince pies and fires glowing and everything. But then within sort of like each chapter, there was something about Christmas traditions as well. So there were things about, why did Christmas crackers come about? Why did Christmas cards? What's the Yule log? Where was the first Christmas tree? And I've still got the book. It's very, very sort of like weathered and warm, because I read it to my children as well. So, and I do still quite like reading it, just to sort of like look at the where the history of Christmas, really. So yeah, that was my favourite Christmas book.
Dawn?
I don't have a favourite Christmas
You
book.
do?
No, well, no, but instead, my favourite book as a child, I'm going to say it's a Christmas book because it's full of snow, it's got an ice queen, it's got Turkish Delight. So Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe was always my absolute favourite book. And I think there's enough Christmassy elements in there to make that a Christmas book.
Yeah.
And you, Linda?
I'm the same. I don't really have a book, but I do love the poem, the Christmas poem, The Night Before Christmas. I have recited it, and I've still got the book that I was given and use it it's now Sellotape to Death. But yeah, I just absolutely love that poem. I really do.
Thank you. Does anyone in the audience have a question to ask our writers? Anything you want to know about Christmas books?
Perhaps
Yes.
not about Christmas in particular, but I was interested in knowing if you test your writing on a young audience before publication, like children in your family or young friends.
The question is, do the writers test their books on young people within their family or whatever, actually, before they're finished? Yeah.
Yes, is the answer. I fortunately have young grandchildren, so right now that's fantastic. I take them, worst critics ever. Have taken books into schools and asked if I could please read a story, even worse critics ever. But it's the sort of feedback you want, and you very quickly know, because they'll just look away, they're not interested. It's fantastic. The very first book I wrote of that, I made the mistake of not doing it and had to republish. It was too long, some of the wording wasn't right, and the kids weren't interested. I re-edited it, and it went down much better. So yeah.
I've had friends' children read mine, not my own children. The older two have read it, but the younger one, the youngest one hasn't read it yet, because I think she's afraid she won't like it. So she will read it eventually, but yeah.
Yeah. Dawn.
Not before publication, no. I mean, I was, well, all the time I was writing these particular ones, I was a member of a writing group for children. We called it Society of Children's Book Authors and Illustrators. And so all my books have been through critique groups and all the rest of it. But I take all of my books into school afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm at school all the time. So luckily they do go down very well.
It's good. It's good. John, did you have a question?
Questions. First of all, I fully take your point about paper and colours. I prefer to write on cream paper than white. You're both, sorry, three of you have got various backgrounds that you put into your books. Now, my son refused to read properly until Harry Potter came. His complaint was he was expecting a book every year, and that didn't happen. But when you come to write your stories, how much of yourself you put in? How much of your daily life goes into that story? If you're trying to get something out, so you say, your head has gone wrong that week or whatever.
I do that quite a lot with the crime books I write. Not the murder, you know, I haven't knowingly murdered. But yes, there is quite a bit, because I was working in mental health, I was setting up projects, we were bringing people from the institutional life into society. So there was a lot of crossover with social workers, police, you name it, and a lot of history there. And when I actually worked for the NHS, I worked in secure hospitals occasionally and such like. So I've met a lot of very fascinating, interesting people, and they very much work their way through, and it's cathartic. I will admit now that one of the main characters in the first book of The Prime, I couldn't bear, and he's turned out to be a baddie. Really cathartic. You know, do it.
Yes, Lynn.
I think the same as Linda has said. Some in my books, people who, as I said earlier, the characters aren't based on anybody, but there might be sort of like little snippets, little incidences, and sometimes those are good, sometimes they are bad. I think of myself put myself in the book. I'm not actually sure I'm in there anywhere, not purposefully anyway, but I suppose you put yourself into it anyway as you're writing. But I think for me, sort of like the writing itself, I find very sort of like therapeutic for me. It's a distraction. It's something that I enjoy doing.
Oh,
Dawn?
well, for me, I also write adult crime, and my adult crime books are very much about what's going on around me. They're cosy crimes, and they're based in North Yorkshire villages. And yes, there are probably people in there that would recognise themselves possibly. And my new one, which comes out next year, my psychological thriller, does involve me. Things that happened to me in my past, which I've never told anybody. They were the foundation of that one. But my kids' books, no. My kids' books, I write the books that I wanted to read as a child. So they're about what I wanted, So that's how I write.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any more questions? No? Well, that's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much indeed. Can we say thank you to our author?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate.